I noticed something interesting happen in a transaction just recently, and then about a week later, the same thing came up in conversation with a prospective client. And I'm going to tell you about it right after I ask you to please subscribe to the channel by making that red button right below turn gray. And if you would ever so kindly help me get this information out to more people, you can do so by going down and making that gray thumb turn blue. My job on this channel is to educate you about local Surrey, Fraser Valley, and Canadian real estate for that matter. And your job is to then subscribe, comment, and make sure you hit that thumbs up. Now I'm going to preempt this video by saying that if you would like to blame certain people or certain governments for your inability to afford a home, just don't. This is not a video for the bubble bursters out there that have been wishing forever that
maybe today will be the day that the prices crash back down to $26,000 like they were in 1968. And finally, I'll be able to afford a property with all of those savings that I have in the bank. But the bank just went belly up, because that's what would happen if the market crashed 97.83%, and if I happen to have savings, they would be gone too.
No, rather this is a video designed for people that are trying to educate themselves and trying to find the best way to navigate themselves through this crazy Canadian real estate market. And now on with the story. So a few weeks back, actually, one of you amazing YouTubers out there got in touch with us, and with the help of our team member Chandani, actually ended up buying a property. These clients looked at all sorts of different options in their preferred area, only to actually cycle back and buy a house that they had seen previously. Now, this property was a very, very good house. However, it was passed over the first time as a result of the property being tenanted. And to be nice, the property was not exactly clean and tidy. And that's a big chunk to the story. So what had happened is the tenant stopped paying rent some months ago, and believe it or not, had even partially moved out, leaving half of their stuff behind. And well, let's just say it was less than spick and span. The tenant not paying their rent was probably the biggest key to this whole thing. You see, in negotiations, when our client decided to actually offer on the property, we found out that the seller was not actually a resident of Canada for tax purposes. Now in BC, when you're selling, that's not really a big deal. There's some holdbacks that have to happen, and the CRA has to get their capital gains. But all of that taxation that you're thinking about when someone is a non-resident is actually on the purchaser. And the situation I'm trying to highlight in this video didn't actually arise in Canada at all. You see, the seller lives in China, and if they lived in any other country, they may not have had this issue. And that issue actually resulted in them having to sell the property. You see, the country that the seller currently resides in is heavily rumored to be very much cracking down on money leaving and going overseas. Now, I tried to do a bunch of research about this online, and I couldn't really find anything other than that the citizens could only take up to $2,000 a day US, or a maximum of $50,000 a year legally out of the country. And in speaking with another potential client originating from the same area, he told me that in fact the people trying to get money out of that country and into Canada are actualizing a lot less than the supposed legal $50,000 a year. And that's where we got to go back to the story about our clients with their purchase. Now, the tenant, remember, stopped paying rent, and the owner of that property, even though they were overseas, they actually had a mortgage with a Canadian bank. Well, with no income coming out of the property, then that seller had to try and get money out of their country into Canada in order to make the payments. And unfortunately for the seller, they were unsuccessful, so they couldn't get money into the country in order to pay their mortgage. So why don't they just find a new tenant? Well, one thing you have to know in BC is tenants have more rights than landlords. And once they stopped paying, the landlord and the property manager couldn't effectively get the rest of the belongings out and the keys back from the tenant in a timely manner to stop the bleeding financially. So they were left with only one option: to sell the property. And that's where we come in. Well, by we, I mean me and my amazing team and an amazing client. You see, we happen to find, in this case, a motivated offshore seller. And looking back on all the other recent sales in the area, our clients got a smoking deal on the property as a result. And even though the property wasn't in the best condition, they can now put in some elbow grease and make that property way more desirable to the masses and increase their value. But back to the point of the video. It does appear that there are going to be some sellers out there that find themselves in a tough financial position as a result of government policy, whether or not that policy is in writing or not. And another buyer thinks that this is going to be a bigger phenomenon than the rest of the public thinks. And as a result, his strategy is to look specifically in properties where there's a greater chance of finding a seller in this same position. So as a real estate agent, I'm supposed to say, oh no, that never happens. Don't worry about it. That's a needle in a haystack. Well, our clients either just found a needle, or there's a lot more needles than we think. But I'll leave that up to you to decide. Please comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Thank you for watching. Please remember to turn that gray thumb blue, turn that red subscribe button gray. Check out a couple of other videos while you're here, and we'll see you in a couple of days.